Perfect. Happy Friday, everybody. It
Thank
is
you.
5 p.m. on Friday, September 3rd. I want to thank John for taking time out of his day while at work to put together this lovely grant writing Zoom for everybody. Just wanted to let everybody know that this call will be recorded, and if you are still at work or doing other things, please just put your phone number and email in the chat so we can make sure that everybody has a copy when this is finished. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that. You sound so administrative, Pete. Appreciate that. Usually on the fly guy. So that's good. Appreciate that. Yes, if you do put everything in the chat, it gives me the opportunity to be able to follow up later on and send anything out, such as presentations. There's not going to be a lot today. This is going to be a several-week process that we're going to go through. Today's going to be more of an introduction, so question and answer type opportunities, that kind of thing. So I want to be very, very helpful to you. I'll tell you a little bit about myself so that you can understand where I'm coming from. I've been writing grants for about, 35 years now. I got into this whole process accidentally. I went to take over a Salvation Army center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was 21 years of age. I went there. And I got there and I just taken over it. Someone had died. So I was now the new administrator at 21. So all I did was sit down and write down what I saw, what my vision was, what I thought could happen with the place, typed it up, sent it to my leaders. And then I just got busy with the work that I needed to do. Not 2 weeks later, I got a call back that I had won 4 grants from simply what I had written. Now that was quite a few years ago now. And I just accidentally stumbled into grant writing. That's not what my intent was. My intent was just to set a vision that someone would enforce that I follow. And they not only enforced it, they provided the opportunity, sent it out, and I won a couple of grants since then. I stayed on it. I want to be able to make things happen. So I wanted to make things happen. So what I did was I continued to take some classes and all of those other kinds of took some college courses, took everything that was available in the community. I became a grant writer. And at this point, I have probably won about $30 million in grants over the period of time that I've been a grant writer. So about $1 million a year, that's not bad. None of it was kept personally. I've supported salaries, including my own, but none personally. So don't ask me about personal grants, as the case might be. But that's kind of how I got into the grant writing, and just excited about the opportunity to be able to share some of the skill with you, which I have a PowerPoint that we're going to show in a few moments. But I want to take the opportunity for everybody to introduce themselves and say where you're from, or maybe a little bit about yourselves and why you're interested in grant writing. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to do in the order of, I guess it came up on my screen. So Kima, is that how you pronounced it?
Yes.
Kima, would you start us off? Tell us a little about yourself.
I'm Kima. My profession is project management, and I'm not too familiar with grant writing, but it is an interesting thing to learn. So I'm definitely open to whatever you have to say. And there's always room for growth and improvement. So I'm definitely open to this course. And I do appreciate you giving your time, John. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. Good. Angela. Angela's coming in from outer space right now. So.
Hi, Kima. What was the question?
Tell us a little about yourself, and then maybe an interest why you're interested in grant writing.
Okay. My name is Angela. I work in a community center. I am an ESL instructor. And I think, I also volunteer work at Rotary and at Pete Spano's.
Yes, charities.
Charities. So I think that grant writing is important to learn.
Don't forget
Oh, and Kiwanis too.
I like Kiwanis as well. That's right.
Yeah.
Good. Shadleen, did I pronounce that right?
Shadowlin.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was coming off of mute. Hi, everyone. Shadlin. I work in higher ed. Currently interested in learning about grant writing. I've always been interested, but I haven't had any training. I'm part of Rotary and some other organization locally, such as working with New Jersey Haiti Partners, and other organization in New Jersey. Thank you so much, John, for your time, and I'm looking forward to learning.
Great, thank you. And Latasha.
Hi, John. So let me put my video on. Hi, everybody. So my name is Latasha Neal, and I work with at AHRC, a facility for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm behavior intervention specialist, and I'm also a coach and a trainer. So why I'm interested in grant writing is because I know what a valuable resource that is to be able to be a grant writer. I've been in the nonprofit world since I started working, from the After School Corporation to beginning with Children Foundation. Every single job was always not-for-profit that I've had. And there's always a need for money to do great things in this world. So the grant writing, I know, is going to be a really good resource to do some more good.
I agree with that totally. Everyone, you have some area of interest that is personal to you that makes it work. And so I'm glad you're willing to sit with me for a few minutes to just go through the whole process. And today's going to be more introductory. We're going to talk about a few things, and I'm going to follow up with deeper stuff later on. And we're going to end this series by actually writing a grant together. So we're going to pick something. We're going to find a potential funding source, and we're going to write a grant. So that way I'm not just telling you what to do and then leaving you to hang yourself. And I don't mean it to sound so negative. That's probably not the best of words, but I want you to feel like you have the tools to be able to make it happen. And let's just talk about a couple of things quickly relative to that. First of all, you don't need extreme financial skills to be a grant writer. And that's what oftentimes people are fearful because they're worried about having to manage all the money. You don't have to have huge skills with that. You need to have, if you're working for an agency, the basics would be to have an accounting software where you're recording things and you just track what you're spending on the grant, because in all grants, there's going to be a report due at some point in time. And so it's important to be able to say, here's how the money was spent, here's what we've done with it. And so you have an accounting system or software. QuickBooks works just fine. And then all of the other many things, most will work just fine in that process. If you don't have anything like that, and you're really good at keeping records, simply checks and receipts for those checks will work, or credit cards or those kinds of things. Those kinds of things are the basics that you need for that. Now you do have to have a fair amount of writing skill. You have to feel comfortable writing, getting things done. If you are expressive verbally and you're not good at putting it in writing, in this day and age, you can probably get away with that. I've not known anybody to do it this way, but these days you can verbally record something, transcribe it with using one of those transcribing programs. It takes it from the verbal, puts it in writing, and you've basically prepared it. I would suggest that someone proofread it as well, as the case might be. But those are the basic skills that you need. Beyond that, the rest of it just has to do with who you know. I think everybody who's in the room together today, you all have at least one friend, don't you? Do you have a ride and die friend? Ride and die friend who'll read through what you do, what you accomplish, what you work with. Someone who can proofread, give you an opinion. Sometimes it's good to have a few people. Someone who thinks like you and someone who doesn't think like you, so they can just give you the honest, hey, I don't like this, here's how you could think differently. I think those are all good things to be able to have on your team. But let's walk through this and just get through some things together. Let's talk a little bit. What do you view a grant as? Somebody want to take a stab at that? What is a grant? So I make sure we're sort of all on the same page. Any thoughts? How do you view a grant? What do you think it is?
Usually the way I've seen it, it's money that's given to some cause or opportunity that the organization that's receiving it doesn't have to pay back.
Yes, I think it's a really good definition. It is money received for a cause that you don't have to pay back. Generally, you may have to report back but you don't have to pay back. So I would say that there's a huge need for us to be able to really increase the skill, particularly if you deal with causes. You know, I heard someone mention that they work for Haitian group, and right now Haiti needs a lot of attention because of what's happening there. And other people talked about Rotary, Kiwanis, and other kinds of things that are there. Those very, very important. All of those groups have causes. By the way, can you see the entire screen? I realized my talk bar comes over my screen, so I've got to move things around a little bit.
Yes.
But you can, as long as you can see the screen, that's my main concern. I don't want anybody not to be able to see it. Let's kind of take a look at that and talk a little bit about some of the kinds of grants that are out there. There's a category called public services. Public services are what you do for the public generally. There's youth programming, senior programs, social services. Oftentimes in the community that I live in, these things surround us. So I think probably in downtown Yonkers, there's probably people receiving grants for every one of those categories, and probably others that aren't even listed there. If you have an idea in your head about youth services, there's a grant for it, or senior services, or social services. Social services that's a broad name for many, many different things. So that could be housing and homelessness. It could be feeding programs. It could be all kinds of other things. So I was trying to categorize that. So there's money out there to be able to do all of those kinds of things. So and the key will be knowing what the funder wants to fund. There's also something called public facilities. Public facilities are usually things that grants that help to improve services to the community through improving the neighborhoods. So there are grants, for example, there might be some grants that people are going to need after we finish this cleanup after this recent storm. So improving neighborhoods, or improving neighborhoods just because maybe the neighborhood is blighted in some way. Maybe it's a low-income neighborhood and maybe it needs some infrastructure improvement. So there's money out there for that. So improving neighborhoods, infrastructure actually, sometimes you get money for rent to pay for a program that you're doing. Sometimes you can get money to build a facility. Sometimes you can get money to remodel a facility. So all of those things can be infrastructure related. And so it's really fantastic. And what makes it different than program, public facilities pays for property, obviously. Public services pays for program. So just to get those two kind of areas in our head. Generally, most cases you don't write for the two on the same grant unless the grantor says it is possible to do that. So it's really good stuff to just kind of understand the two. Last one I listed there was economic development. The economic development is the buzzword now for employment placement, job training, all of those kinds of things, business assistance, entrepreneurial programs, those kinds of things are all a part of those kinds of things. So it's really, really great stuff. And people need to be employed now. And sometimes people don't possess the skills to get employed, and we need to spend a little bit more time for them. How do you get the money to make that happen? Well, that's what we're headed in that direction. I wanted to share just one other thing. There's something called ESG or Emergency Services Grant, which oftentimes deals with housing. So street outreach or emergency shelter or homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. And I think we've all probably, if we're all from the city, obviously, so it's something that we've had to deal with greatly. So keeping people from being homeless is a grantable thing. Right now, there's a lot of legislation going around our country right now to keep people from losing their homes because of the COVID crisis that we recently faced. So there's a lot of money out there. I think one of the things, a qualifying statement, I want to say there's money out there for everything under the sun. If you can dream it and put it in writing and create a budget for it, you can dream it. And so we can make some things happen. Any questions at this point in time about any of these kinds of grants?
Could you go back to the slide right before this, if you don't mind? I didn't.
Sure.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
I can send this to you after we're done as well. So,
Okay.
So you don't have to write a lot of notes about what I have here. Let's write notes next to the notes.
Okay.
Kind of a thing.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's definitely there. So any questions? Anything? Good to go on? Let's talk about what's in a proposal. Now, I got into proposal writing simply by using the concept of term paper. Has everyone here written a term paper before, whether for high school or for college?
Yep.
So you understand that feeling that oftentimes it's usually an introduction,
Uh,
3 paragraphs, and each paragraph dealing with a different subject, and then a closing statement of some sorts, right? A closing paragraph and that kind of thing. I've also compared it to preaching, where the preacher gets you started, they bring you in. Someone else is coming. Oops, there we go. You know, the preacher gets you started by drawing you into whatever he's speaking about, and then he spends the next 15 minutes talking about different subjects and all the rest of that. And at the end, he either calls you to a commitment, or these days it might be to a financial commitment as well, kind of a thing. So it's that kind of concept. There are pieces that go into a proposal that makes a proposal complete for other people. And so that's what we're looking at here. And so we're going to talk about all these components very quickly. Let's talk about the project benefit. What are you trying to benefit? What are you trying to do? What is your overall goal? You need to determine exactly what the project is for and how it will benefit the community. So for example, if I wanted to move into a community and I decided I just want to do a housing program, but the community has no homelessness, it's not a benefit to anyone. So the key is to kind of have an idea of what the benefit is to that community. There's a lot of research that's done to try to do that. There are professional studies that are done on need, where someone will come to your community, they will examine, and it takes a period of about 6 months minimum to be able to do a community assessment, and they will assess and try to let you know, here are all the needs in your community. Now, if you're a good reader and you've been reading and keeping up with things, you may have an idea of that. You may have the ability to do some research and statistical things on your own. Certainly, as we move into the college years, you learn to do a lot with research. So it's really important to just realize that you need a benefit for the community. Don't just create things. I mean, there's some things that we make very generic, like we always say, all communities need youth programs, and that may be very true, but if you're in a senior community, you don't need youth programs, or vice versa, or any of those kinds of things. What is the benefit? What are you creating? What's the project? What is it? How does it benefit a particular community that you're thinking of? So if you're going to put together a proposal, that's one thing that you want to determine before you begin to write. Okay, so think through that process, go from there. Next would be eligible activities. We are guided by whatever the funder is willing to fund. So don't just arbitrarily write things necessarily. Now I'm going to tell you what to do with it when you have something that's already written. But the idea is to figure out what they're going to fund. If I say, and I'm giving you, I've got $1 million and I'm giving it away, and I say, I want all people with no hair, big noses, and green eyes, don't come to me with blue eyes, you know, or with hair or anything like that. You've got to follow the funder and make sure that what you're doing is going to be what they want. An example of that would be, I recently worked with Stu Leonard's. Yes, Stu Leonard's has an office here in Yonkers, or a store here in Yonkers. Stu Leonard lost his son to a pool accident many years ago, and he decided that it was very, very important to be able to help other children not to go through that. None of the family should go through the emotions that he needed to go through. And so he decided that he would benefit children by providing money if we provided swim lessons. So now, being the YMCA, which is where I work, I guess you figured that out already. I know most of you. So we decided and set a proposal that shared simply that we wanted to teach swim lessons. We created a cost, figured out what it would cost, and we asked him for the money to do it. He was bought in hook, line, and sinker, and he gave it to us. We looked at how he wanted to do it. We gave him exactly what he wanted. We got it. And we developed that relationship in 2000. He still funds us to this year. So you're talking a 21-year relationship we have with him, just simply because we know how to answer the questions that he asks for. Let me just say this to Pete. If someone contacts you, if you see something pop up that says somebody's out there, please let me know, because sometimes you can get caught up in the narrative portion of things and not respond to it. So I want to make sure that nobody ends up stuck out there. So make sure you fit the eligibility, what the funder wants. So if they say it's a property related thing, don't send them program. If they say it's a program related thing, don't send them property. They say it's got to be for senior citizens, don't send them children. How do you find those things out? There are documents that do that. And we're going to go over that as a part of this series that we're going to go through. How do you match up the data, the information, so that you get exactly what you're looking for. The national objective. I put that there because I want you to think a little bit about what the nation is looking for. Sometimes people pick a small project of a bigger initiative. For example, a little while ago, some people mentioned Rotary. Rotary does a lot of local projects, but they have a national initiative or a national objective that they're trying to meet. So if you're going to do a portion of that, you want to know what the national objective is so that you fit right in there. Again, sometimes the organizations that we're part of automatically get us funding. If I say I'm a Rotarian, there may be people that come out of the woodworks that automatically want to fund me just because I said I'm a Rotarian and I am supporting whatever that objective is. Now, I'm more of a Kiwanian, although for a short period of time, Pete has gotten me involved with Rotary, but I certainly understand that. And so what we try to do is create projects that come in under the national objectives, and we can do whatever we want, but we try to match with the national objectives so we have no questions about getting the things done that we want to get done. Quick note about performance measurements. Has anybody ever gone through a review of a program, of your finances, or of your job? Anybody here ever gone through that? What was that experience like?
It could be a little bit stressful, but for the most, it was fine because I was doing a good job. So if I wasn't doing a good job, I think it would have been something else.
And even when you're doing a good job, you used a good word. It is stressful because you know at some point someone's going to look at what you've done to see if you met the objectives for that job, for example. That's exactly what happens in an audit. It's exactly what happens in a program review. It's exactly what happens when you're dealing with grants. Performance measurements. There are grants out there that are based on your performance. They might say, we will grant you up to $1 million. But every objective you have is worth a certain amount. And you may not get all the money. You may get it based on each objective. So you have to understand each objective and see how well you did. So if they score, let's see, if you have to have a score of 10 and they scored you an 8, you may not get 100% of the money. So those are things you want to look at the beginning of a grant. Oftentimes you see that in government contracts, performance measures, and we're going to talk about that soon. Performance measures where they decide, okay, we've awarded you $1 million, but you end up only getting 800,000 out of it because you didn't meet all the objectives. So those are some things you want to look at before you apply, because there may be areas you know you won't be successful, and you want that clear and upfront and negotiate all of that out before they tell you they're not going to give you everything that you deserve. I think it's good that sometimes we spend time working on things that we can get reimbursed. You want to spend your time in the right thing. Another piece, and this is coming more and more, environmental reviews. A lot of the grants lately, as I've been reading, are coming out with something called an environmental review, which means the community around it, the ability of that community to sustain it, the environmental factors of that community that may be causing problems. Certainly, we know the environment can affect health, can affect all kinds of things. So there are all kinds of things that need to be considered environmental reviews, and some require a statement from environmentalists as to something about the community in which you're serving. You know, this is the kind of community that we're in. Matter of fact, here recently in Yonkers, there's a project called the Daylighting. And the daylighting was the uncovering of parts of the Sawmill River. This part we call the creek, and they were uncovering it. And they were required to turn in environmental reviews where people looked to see, first of all, why did they cover up the creek? Why do they want to uncover the creek? You know, so looking at the environmental reviews, whether or not the environment can handle it. Now that dealt with direct environmental issues, but some do not. I'm seeing this more and more. So sometimes they will ask more about your community and your community's ability to be able to respond to the needs, and environmental issues are coming up more and more. Last one on this page, design considerations. Sometimes when we talk about design week, we talk about architecture. We talk about all of those kinds of things, architecture, decor, all of those kinds of things. Those sometimes become a part of the project as well. These days, oftentimes there are a lot of not-for-profits that are popping up all over the place, and it's good. If you're meeting a need that no one else has met, that's a fantastic opportunity. So there are some design considerations. What makes you unique? What makes the organization unique? What makes how you respond unique? And what makes the facility that you're working out of unique to the need in your community? Sometimes we create things based on the fact that we want to do them. And so this is all about connecting other groups, connecting and doing things in that community that are uniquely served. Anybody work for a job where somebody does something similar to what your job provides? For example, I work for the YMCA, so I'm dealing with gym and swim activities. People want to work out, people want to swim, and so we've got that. So one of the things that we had to talk about in terms of design considerations was what was unique about this facility that made it different than Bally's or other organizations that have existed over the years. What made us unique? Why do we deserve to get grant money when people can pay for these services or all the rest of that? So in terms of that, the design consideration was where we're located, the people that we are serving, low income people who normally can't afford a gym membership, or maybe actually in some proposals we've even written in the effect about how oftentimes in minority communities people do not work out. We have high blood pressure, we have all kinds of issues that people have in their own lifestyles that needed that. So our program considerations had to be very, very different in order to be able to get those grants. And I will tell you, we get most of them because of location. We designed it around people of need as opposed to just general. So those are things you have to think about. Any questions about anything on this page? Any thoughts? Anybody want to try for me to create a benefit? What's a need in the community that you see that you would love to be able to serve?
Homelessness.
Homelessness. Okay. In what way?
So this was actually brought to my attention by a friend, but like some people are, homeless because of something extreme or something that happened in the moment, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have a job. And I feel like there's a lot of people that when they do become homeless, even if it's for a short season, people that have jobs or people that, might be in quote unquote middle class, they end up going to the same homeless shelters as people that have significant issues or mental health concerns and so forth. And there's nothing necessarily for them that keeps their dignity. And then also, as far as the family gets split up, a lot of homelessness shelters, it's like the women and children go here and the men go there. But if you're a family, and let's say, we just had the flood, the hurricane, you know what I mean? If you lose all your things because of the hurricane, that was like, nothing you could have done to control that. And you go home, but then you're split apart for however long. And that does put a strain on the family. So being able to provide that, a place where families who, the parents are working, they're doing all they can, but they just got in this situation. Where is there a homeless shelter that they can still go, have their dignity and be together, instead of, yeah.
You're doing a great job at that. No, you mentioned some real needs, some real concerns. Anybody else want to take a stab at what Latasha said and now turn it into a statement of benefit? So she mentioned a number of things. She talked about homelessness. She talked about mental health issues. She talked about families being separated. She talked about storms. Anybody want to take any one piece of that and turn it into a one statement benefit that, you don't have to use all of them, but a one statement benefit? Anybody comfortable enough to do that? Let me give an example. We would like to benefit homeless families that are normally separated by our system by creating a shelter that will leave the family as one single unit. That would be an example. Anybody want to take a stab at one of the other areas, maybe mental health? What would be the benefit? A benefit. Any thoughts? Yes, no? That might
I'll
be,
give
that,
it a
go ahead,
crack at it.
go ahead.
This is a little separate, but you can let me know if I'm going on the same track. We will provide um, home housing for people specifically with mental health needs, with the support of mental health professionals in the community.
Excellent, excellent. So meeting the needs of those with mental health challenges by mental health professionals. By the way, and now that you mentioned that, it is important that depending on the area of need that you are trying to address, that you have the right people addressing it. And like oftentimes you deal with mental health, they're going to look, and you would write that into your proposal. They're going to look for the kind of staff that you're going to hire. 30 years ago, I could write any grant and talk about 3 grandmothers coming over and being able to take care of people, and that would have been acceptable, but not these days. Now you have to talk specifically in terms of education and all those kinds of things in order to be able to help people get the right services. So those are the things to think about. Anyway, so the reason I brought up project benefit is one of the things I'm going to ask you all to do is to come up with a project benefit statement for our next class, which will be a week from today. A project benefit, you're going to think of a project, and I want a benefit statement. How are you benefiting the community? And come up next week with that, ready to make that statement and explain a little bit about it to us. Okay? So, yes.
Sorry, clarification. So should it just be one sentence, or
It could be
long should
one to 2 sentences.
Oh,
So
okay,
you're
perfect.
taking a need and you're summarizing it. So that's almost a proposal by itself, just summarizing. So if you don't mind, I really think it would be a really great opportunity if you all did that and everybody could respond with some kind of project. That way I know you've got it. Okay. The rest of it will fall in place once we do that. But if you can learn to do that piece, it will be a whole lot easier. And let me ask one more piece with that. And a statistic to show why that's needed. Think you can do that? Can you look at? We'll talk about that in a little bit later. But a statistic that will show that need. We'll talk about that shortly, and go from there. Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
I did have a question, John. So what happens? Let's just say there's something that could benefit the community. And there is a need there, but it's not necessarily something that matches the national objective. Is that something that could be rejected because it doesn't?
Well, it all depends on if it's coming from if the place that you're looking to apply with is a national organization or the federal government. You have to make sure it lines up in some way with what they're asking. So you have to find a way to match that. But not all grants are necessarily national based. I mean, we do a lot of things in our local communities and sometimes work with a foundation or even government for that community. So it may not have to line up the national objective. But if you're picking something like hunger, there's issues all across the country. And so they might ask for details about the national objective. What is the national objective for hunger? Well, they'll state that, and then you'll have to kind of say, here's how we're fitting the national objectives. So if you see that in writing, it becomes important. A lot of people kind of ignore that. They just talk about their local needs and don't connect with the bigger picture. And sometimes it's important to just connect with the bigger picture. Did that answer what you were saying?
Yeah.
Basically, it doesn't necessarily have to match, but it's helpful when it does. Any other thoughts? Okay, let's move on. Some paperwork that if you're looking to get grants. These are not private grants. So oftentimes I have people come to me and say, hey, can you write a grant for me so I can go to college? And I keep telling them that's not the type of grant writer that I normally am. I am I deal with organizations and community, and I write grants that benefit the community, but not individuals. That's a whole nother subject and another conversation that can be had with someone who's probably a lot more skilled in that area than I am, but it's definitely a worthwhile subject if that's something that you're looking at. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be in place. So the assumption that I'm going to make is that that we're all going to connect with writing a grant for a charity that's already in existence. So if that's not the case, if you've got a community group that is building itself up and moving from being a non-licensed entity serving the community to possibly becoming a licensed entity. There's a lot more paperwork that's there, but I wanted to mention some of the bigger things that oftentimes are not listed. One is the DUNS number. DUNS number is something that comes on a federal contract, well, a federal contract requires. You can just, if you Google DUNS, you can get a DUNS number in a day. You just have to share some of your not-for-profit information, and somehow I've combined it so that I didn't keep everything connected. But what the DUNS number is awarded to those who already are charities that have been registered with the IRS. If you're running a charity, and Pete's recently been through this, if you are a charity, you have a certain amount of paperwork that you have to fill out, that you have to make sure is in place. And again, I'm coming from the assumption that we're all connected with certain charities already. Is there anyone in this group that's looking to build their own thing right now? I don't have to spend a lot of real time on that if that's not the case. Kiwanis, Rotary, YMCA, PS Charity, all have a DUNS number already. They've gone through this whole process already, gotten all this information so that they're not restricted. Just as a note, DUNS numbers are only required on grants that are federal. Now, there are some grants that seem like they're city or state or county or something like that that are really federal. Has anybody ever heard these 4 letters, CDBG, or they stand for Community Development Block Grant? Has anybody ever heard of that before? So I know Pete's begun dealing with those kinds of things. A block grant is money from the federal government, from all those wonderful taxes we all pay. They take some of that money and send it back to a local community based on census data and information about that community. They send a certain amount of money back. So if the city's giving it away, is it city money or is it federal money?
Can it be both?
Well, you have to answer to the city, but guess what the city has to answer to?
The federal.
The federal. So therefore, it's a required document. And one of the things that becomes true with federal monies, and one of the reasons they track all of this, is because they want to make sure that you haven't gotten more than $750,000 in grant income. If you do, then you have to do a high-level audit for them to demonstrate how that $750,000 was used. So that's, all of this has to do with their tracking. So I just want to make sure that you have the right paperwork in place. So you need what is another name for a charity? There's some IRS numbers and letters that I'm hoping somebody will say.
Foundation or organization?
Foundation or organization. Keep going. Go ahead. Somebody said to say it.
Oh, I said 503.
501c3. Which is what most charities are. There are other levels of 501. There's C4, C5. There's all kinds of other derivatives of that. For example, people who give money are a 501. I forget what the actual code are, but they have a different license number. All of the rest of that, some can give. By the way, as a charity, can you give money? Just dropping that thought out just to see what people know. Can I give away money as a charity?
I don't know.
It's a good question, right? Go ahead. What's that?
So with restrictions as to how you're giving it and who you're giving it to?
Well said. Exactly that. So it doesn't mean because my agency has $200,000 in the bank that I just give it away. There are restrictions to that because it all depends on the purpose of your organization and the intent of the donor who gave you the money. They might say this money is to be given to people who are behind in their rent. So then that would be acceptable, those kinds of things. But those are things that you need to know upfront, ahead of time, so that people do not mess themselves up. There are probably about 50,000, there's about 50 to 1,000 different charities that open up every year, brand new, 50 to 1,000. Some years there's very few, and because we're coming through COVID, the numbers are very low. But as many as 1,000 charities will open up across the country, and in that, the majority of them close after 1 year. And that's because they don't understand what they can do with the money that they get. People will go and pay their personal rent, pay their personal utility bills, pay for all kinds of things like that. Not acceptable practices. So it's very, very important to understand that as a charity, is your purpose to serve the community in the way that you said you're going to serve it. Not just do anything, but to have a guideline that sort of helps to set that up. All right, back to task. If you can get the DUNS number, you can see there's a website there that I included for you to be able to look up, so that if you have your own charity or you're going to be a charity, you definitely want to go after that DUNS number very quickly, because it's going to benefit you in a greater way. When we start talking about writing specific grants, we're going to take a look at federal grants, we're going to take a look at state grants, and we're going to take a look at private grants, we're going to take a look at things like that. So I think it's important. I think it's important to kind of select an objective, overall objective of what you're trying to do when you're writing a grant. Are you trying to create we talked a little bit about objectives a little while ago, a suitable living environment, for example, or decent housing, or creating an economic opportunity. Those are some that we listed before. Selecting an objective. A grantor will oftentimes, they'll develop a plan and they'll pass to you their plan. This is what we want to do in the community. You need to make sure you pick the objective that's there. Most grants ask for you to pick one objective that's on their proposal. I took this from one that came from the city of Yonkers, which is a block grant. So is it city or is it federal?
Federal.
It's federal. So so it's a federal grant. So, and they had these three choices. So if I wrote a grant for them, these are the three that I had to choose from. So sometimes things can be both, you know, because if you're creating a suitable living environment, you might be doing it by creating decent housing or creating economic opportunity. But if they ask you to choose one, choose one. You know, it's easier later on, because then when you're having to answer back, you're only answering questions related to that specific area. This also came out off of a city application. It says select one outcome: availability or accessibility. If, for example, if I create a seniors program, have I made it available to people who usually can't get it? Or have I made it accessible to people who know it exists, but they couldn't get there? Availability, accessibility. So there's a slight difference there. Or affordability or sustainability. What does sustainability mean, by the way? Does anybody know what sustainability means?
To maintain it, to maintain
it. Oftentimes people will come up with grants and information and get something started, but then walk away before the project's done. That is so typical of inner city communities, that oftentimes people come in and they come in like the candy man. They got all these great things and they do all kinds of big lead stuff, and then 6 months later it no longer exists. Sustainability. So these days, sustainability is a big word. So if you are looking to make a difference in a community over an issue, what's your long-term plan? You just don't go with a short-term plan. Short-term, they'll give you money to do a short-term goal, but what is your long-term plan in order to be able to keep it going? Don't just take my $50,000 and then a year later you no longer exist. What is your plan to continue to meet that need over a period of time? Okay, let's talk a little bit about goals. Who, what, when, where. Everybody familiar with those words? I think you probably are, because we talk about it related to almost everything. Okay. You need to develop goals and objectives for why you want the grant. Okay. Who are you serving? You don't just create a grant because you had a nice idea. Who are you serving? I am serving people in the 10701 community of Yonkers. That might be my, you know, those are the who. I am serving minorities. I'm serving people who are all have black hair, blue eyes, and yellow dresses. That might be something, but you need to know who you're serving.
Question on.
Yes, go ahead.
From your experience, is it better to get as specific as possible or not so much specific, depending? on?
I think it depends on the funder and how they write the question, because some have a very specific population that they want served. I was working on a grant yesterday and today that wanted to know if we were working with at-risk youth who were formerly incarcerated. And yes, they're a portion of what we're doing, but we're also working with a whole bunch of other youth. So what we did was we said, yes, we are, but also, and we added that in sort of as an addendum to the statement, so they know that we're serving. I wanted them to get the idea that we're not only serving the people that they've chosen, but they have an opportunity to be a part of the program even after they're no longer part of that service. So maybe they did have a history or a background, and we got them started in the program that we're going to work on. But I want them to know that the program would still be available to them after all of that's behind them. So it all depends. It depends on how the funder asks the question and what you can squeeze in. Some funding have word deadlines, word capacity. So they might say, write this in 400 words or less. And that sounds really great most of the time, except sometimes when you're trying to express the need, when you're talking about need, it's sometimes very difficult to put in a few words, because you want to be able to talk about that. For example, if I were to ask you, how do you resolve poverty in your community? Can anybody put that in one sentence? So in my head, it would be, why did you give me a limit on that? I could express that 15 different ways without even thinking about it. That's the challenge. So you have to try to be as concise as you can within the framework that they give you. So the who is really whatever they're asking for, who you're serving. Don't let me forget, I want to be able to talk about what you do when you've written a proposal and it doesn't fit what they necessarily want. Okay, you don't throw anything away. Everything's still good. Okay, what are you trying to? We talked about that a little earlier. What are you trying to meet? What need are you trying to meet? What are you going to do? Oftentimes you can explain the need, but you didn't explain what you're going to do about it. So you want to talk about the need, but you definitely want to explain why you're uniquely suited to be able to meet that need. Certainly, people have slipped through that crack, but most of the time they do not. They want a very clear statement as to how you're going to serve it and what makes you unique to that. From when to when are you going to be able to do this? Some organizations give you a deadline. They'll say, we will give you money, we'll give it to you October 1st, but you have to spend it all by December 31st. Now that may revise exactly what you were thinking, particularly with that funder, because the need that you were if you're trying to meet homelessness, that's usually not a 3-month resolvable issue. That may take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to resolve. So that may or may not be something that you want to get the funding for, unless it's initially just to pay rents for people who are behind in their rent. Then it would definitely fit. So you want to be able to fit the timelines, constraints that they give you, and spend all that money. I have a grant that I have to have spent. I still have $30,000 in this grant that I have to spend by September 30th. And I'm going nuts with the program staff here as to how they're going to spend that money in time for us to be able to keep it. If they don't spend it in time, we lose it. So there are time constraints. Generally, when you sign a contract with someone, there's always some kind of time restriction that says the money is available from this date to that date, and it must be spent within that period. Or they will ask something which is unique. They might say, we will give you the funding for 1 year. You provide additional funding for the year after, and you have to match it. So you have to pay attention to the when and other kinds of constraints that they might place on those kinds of things. Where? Oftentimes there's a need in the community and we don't know how to meet it because it's all over the community. So they'll ask where. Now, you might be able to define it by zip codes. You might have to define it by a facility that you're going to work out of. If I live in Yonkers and the need is in Harlem and I say I'm going to serve out of the Yonkers YMCA, would that work? Off the top of my head, that would be a no. as the case might be. But if I was willing to travel down into Harlem every day to be able to meet that need, maybe. So you need to be expressive about where, in terms of the community that you're serving, and what facility you're going to serve out of. Now, if you don't have a facility, does it mean you can't meet need? Hopefully you still can. Most charities really are informal groups of people that get together and serve the community. So you need to be able to say where you're working from and where you're serving. And so those are things that you definitely have to think about. Sometimes you can serve a community that your facility is not in. You just have to come up with a really important plan. Let's go back to the why. Why is this? Let's go to the why. Why is this so important to you? Why do you want to serve that community? That's a very, very important piece, because if need is all around us, what made you choose this particular community? What made you want to serve this particular population? Those are important pieces. And those I'm on the why. Let's talk a little bit about the why. Why did the funder want to give money? Oftentimes the funder has met a need in their own lives. Maybe, I mentioned Stu Leonard a little while ago, because he lost a child. It became an important issue to him personally. So when I talked to Stu Leonard, I asked about his other kids. I asked about his wife. I asked about his family dynamics. I asked how they're doing overall. I asked, you've been doing this for a while now. What kind of impact were you able to make happen? So I'm dealing with his whys. He's so happy that I'm concerned about his personal life that he signs the check. Is that the only reason I do it? No. I actually know Stu Leonard very well, and he's become a real friend over the years. So I ask it for real reasons. But I want to say to you, please don't ignore that. Every foundation, every funder is giving money for a reason. Somebody's been impacted. If you can find out why, that would be a great thing for you, great tool in your arsenal, because then you can make sure you're meeting that need. Why do you donate? Something resonates with you. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do. Any thoughts at this point? Anybody want to add anything? Ask a question? Grant writing 101. So it's all basic stuff. Wait till we start writing the proposal. That's when all the questions will come. Any questions? Anything? Couple of things. I put YMCA here. I didn't need to do this. Oftentimes people ask, why are we qualified now? Because I write for the YMCA, that's why this is here. They'll ask about qualifications. Why do you think you are the one to respond to this need? Is there something special about you? Maybe. So I give them the qualifications. So if I'm writing for a youth program, I tell them all about the great degrees my youth staff got and the impact that they've had. Impact is important. If you've done something that has impact, please make sure it's there. All of those pieces are a part of that, or past experience in providing the service. So you definitely want to be able to do that. What you can do there. They're going to ask about your board of directors. Pete, do you have a board of directors? I don't know if Pete got caught up anywhere else. Pete, do you have a board of directors? He's caught up.
I know for the Rotary we do.
You do, right. You have a specific group of people that make the final decisions. And then you have other members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Board of directors has what's called a fiduciary responsibility for any organization, which means that if something goes wrong, they're the ones held responsible by the IRS and all the other kinds of things. So the board of directors becomes very, very important. By the way, what makes a board of directors different for a not-for-profit than a for-profit? Anybody know?
Not sure.
What's that?
Oh, I said I'm not really sure.
Okay. A for-profit organization raises money, and what do they do with the money when it's done? Give it to all the board members. They make money off the deal. A not-for-profit board makes no money. They're all volunteers. All volunteers. So if you're thinking about creating a program and making everyone an employee and a board member, not a good idea. Because then how does your board of directors tell the employee what to do? You really can't. That becomes a bit of a challenge. So the whole idea is the IRS has separated the two. So the board of directors, I think my speakers are about to go out. So 1 second, let me just plug them in. Okay, so for example, so now where does that leave the executive director? Well, the executive director is usually not the president of the board, nor should they be, because you need people who hires the executive director? The board of directors. Who hires the CEO? The board of directors. And they manage it for a period of time. They're usually kept very separate, very apart, so it's very clear who the volunteers are and who the paid employees are. So just an important part. So these are some of the things that they would want. They would want you to list the names, phone numbers, name of employers to see what kind of people they are. I know some boards that require members of the board of directors to turn in financial statements, copies of their own tax forms to be used, kind of a thing, to be able to show they're people of success. There are 3 kinds of board members. Those with time, those with talent, and those with treasure. Why we want somebody with time? Basically, to help get the work done. Talent, because they have a specific skill area, a lawyer, a doctor, a social worker, or something like that. Treasure, there are sometimes, and not every board member fits it, sometimes you got somebody on there, they're not really helpful in any other way except that they can write the check. You know, you want to buy 40 bicycles for kids who don't have them, and one person can write the check, let them write the check. Don't argue, don't fight, just say thank you. Time, talent, treasure are 3 good reasons for board members, and you should have someone reflecting every area that you can to make sure that you meet the purpose. Last piece, and this is all the structural stuff. We're going to start writing a grant, so that next week. So that's going to be a good thing. Audits have to be done for charities. At the end of the year, you have to report your income to the IRS. So that's why I suggest that if you're going to run any kind of charity, that you track how the money's being spent, what's being done with it, and that you have some way of tracking that. So if I came to your office right now and said, show me the transactions over the last month, you should have some kind of tracking mechanism, even if it's only an Excel spreadsheet that says copy paper, $42. At least it's a tracking mechanism so that you can be, and then you can back it up. So if someone gave me a check for $200, there's a bank statement that shows that money's in the bank. So matching things up, those are very simple things to do. If you give someone a check for something, make sure they sign something that they've received it or turned in an invoice. Great ways of tracking things. So that way you can do all of that kind of stuff. This is all the structural stuff. So very, very important things to be able to understand that, because now once you understand the structure and what's behind it, now we can just write and be able to do that. So next week we're going to meet, we're going to review a proposal or 2 that have been written by people, and then we're going to start writing our own. Anybody interested in that? Hopefully. So does anybody remember what the homework assignment is?
Yes.
To create
I missed it, I think.
a benefit statement. Does anybody
Oh,
remember
okay.
that? Right?
And the
So homework assignment next week is to have a benefit statement. Actually, let's take it one step further. A fictitious charity, a benefit statement, and the needs you're trying to meet. Can you do that? A fictitious charity. You can call it the Salvation Navy if you want. You know, a fictitious charity. No, that was actually a charity at one point in time. So a fictitious name, a benefit statement, and the kind of people you're trying to meet. Can you do that next week? And it'll just set the platform for us to be able to begin reviewing a proposal and then writing a proposal.
The last one was the kind of need that
And the kind of needs you're trying to meet.
Okay.
Okay, which should match it, coincide with the benefit statement. Okay, so make sure they all kind of work together. All right, simple enough.
And usually, are they
Yes.
just like one sentence? Or
Everything can be one sentence,
Okay.
and 1 to 2 sentences, because we're being concise. We're going to review an actual proposal next week and then just go over the details and see what we can do from there. Anybody have any questions at this point in time?
I just had one. When it comes to writing the grant,
as a grant writer yourself, do you need to have special qualifications or,
No,
Um,
actually.
okay,
You can be somebody's grandmother and write a grant. There's no special qualifications, as the
Thank you.
case might be. As long as you have the paperwork of the organization that you're writing for, when you're submitting it, if they have to turn in, statements that say that they're a charity, that's about all you need. Anybody can write it. So there's no qualification. Although there are professional grant writing courses, there's professional trainings. Matter of fact, I want to cue you all in, although it's probably not happening now because of COVID. Um, please give some consideration to the fact that occasionally the library does grant writing series trainings. The Rotary Club of Yonkers has provided a number of workshops on grant writing. So those of you from Hudson Valley, I'm connecting you. And there are other organizations that have done that as well. Pay attention. If I see anything, I will send it to all of you. So make sure that that all the information is in the chat. I'm about to copy that whole thing, so I've got everybody's email address, and I will, when I see things like that, I will send them to you and keep you updated. And some of them are so worthwhile being a part of. Sometimes they're specific. You might go to one that's only dealing with youth programs and how to write that grant, or one that's dealing with housing programs and how to write that grant. Great, they're really, really worth it. And there's nothing exciting as being able to, if you are a person that notices need and you're a person that wants to respond to need, this is finally the opportunity to be able to do something about it. So great way to go. Any questions, any thoughts, any last minute things?
I have a
Yes.
question. The DUNS number, what do we need that for? I don't remember.
For federal contracts, so anything that has federal money behind it, they will ask for the DUNS number. The only thing I suggest to everyone is just get it anyway, because you don't know where funding is oftentimes going to come from. I have to sit with my auditor every year because he asks every year, John, is this city funding? Is this private funding? Did it come from the federal government? And I have to be able to share that because the government is looking to see what's going to happen with that $750,000 and determine whether I have to have an A133 audit, or so they can make sure that they get what's theirs, or that I'm showing management. So
the person who the person or the group that needs it is the
charity,
non-profit, not the grant writer.
not the writer, not the grant writer.
Okay.
The grant writer may need to input it though in order to complete the grant.
Right.
Yeah.
So the organization has to have it. And if you're giving the controls to the grant writer to put it all in, they'll ask for that information. If you want the grant writer to just write everything, give it to you, and you're going to retype everything and put it in, which I don't recommend because it's a lot of work. You can do that. We're gonna look at places to find grants. We're gonna look at all of those kinds of things because I want you to be able to feel comfortable making it happen for yourself. And by the time you're all done, you'll be able to at least write some kind of a grant and get funded for it. So, any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Are there grants specifically for like churches as well that you know
Yes.
of? Or?
Yes, most churches can write grants based under the 501c3 status.
Okay.
Some are licensed slightly differently, but yes, most churches can do grants. The only thing I suggest, now I got into grant writing as a pastor, so one thing I'm going to suggest is be able to separate your spiritual mission from your physical mission. Not that you don't mention it, you can mention your spiritual mission, but make sure it's very clear that you're not using it just to proselytize, but you're using it to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to be able to do, very clear. I make it really clear on all my applications when I'm writing for my church, which is the Salvation Army, by the way. When I'm writing for my church, I make it very clear that people will get this service whether they come to church or not. So just make that very clear, because I assume our only purpose of doing it, or a church, is that it's about people coming to church. We're called to meet need, so that's important. So, any other thoughts? Any other immediate questions? I know it's after 6, so I don't want to belabor anyone's time. I'm going to try to be a little bit more structured and end by 6. But the next couple weeks is going to be more up to you folks than me, except other than the reviewing of the grant. Then we're going to write one together. Okay. Any thoughts? Anything else?
You said next couple of weeks. Do you have an end date with?
I don't yet.
Okay.
Pete asked me to do this, and I thought it was a great idea, and I'd like to do it over a period of time so you have all the details. And I'm always going to be available after that. But I think this is a good practice to kind of set something in order where you have a discussion forum where you can say, well, I did this and I did that, I did that. What did I leave out? What didn't I do? What can I do better? Blah, blah, blah. I think this is a good opportunity. So I'm probably going to go at least another 2 or 3 weeks just to get through all the foundations. But if we're going to write one together, we may throw another week on to review. So we that kind of thing. So we'll figure that out as we go along. Any thoughts? Anything else?
I like it. I like
I
it
did-
a lot. Thank you so much.
I did,
Jimmy.
folks, I did hear there's possibly another storm coming up the coast. So please take care of yourselves. If that is the case, make sure you're safe, sound, ready to move forward. And I look forward to teaming up with you. All right. Pete, anything else you want to share with us before we go our separate directions?
No, thank you so much again, John. Really appreciate it for everyone that put their email in the chat. If not, I have an attendance record of everybody, and I know all of your emails. But really excited again. Thank you for putting this together, and I look forward to working on a grant together in the next upcoming week or so.
Great. Okay, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and I look forward to the discussions we're going to have in the next few weeks. It's going to get more intense. So have a great week.
Happy
Thank
Labor
you,
Day.
John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you, John. Please email me that recording when you get a chance to.
No problem.
So I could disperse it to everybody.
I'm just before I hit any other button, I just want to make sure I save all the email addresses I just copied.
Perfect. Perfect. I have one more for you to add.
Okay, that's fine.
You want me to put it in the chat, or do you want me to just tell it to you?
Put in the chat, then I can just copy it.
Copy it. I have a friend that works at the Chase Bank over on Sawmill River Road.
Mm-hmm.
She was traveling today, but she said she's definitely interested in joining next week.
Okay.
As well as another friend that I have that's from Yonkers. Her name is Ruth, and she's a Haitian woman also looking to help with service projects.
Okay, good.
Type both of their emails into the chat just in a moment. I am gonna copy and paste it so I could type it into you. But very productive. We all definitely got a lot from it.
Okay, good. This is just an intro type thing. I'm just trying to get everybody just on the same page, the basics of writing a grant, and then we're going to add the funnel start next week.
Oh yeah.
We're going to review an actual grant that we got funded for, and that got funded, and then we're going to write a grant. So pick a project, Pete, so we can write the grant based on that. Okay.
Perfect. I'm writing Ruth's email right now. Ruth at ENCOUNTERMPR.com. EncounterMPR.com. So this is my friend Ruth.
I see that one.
And let me type in Latoya's email. Latoya is from Chase Bank.
Okay, great.
And it's LATOYA. Her last name is Yakubu.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you didn't tell me that. Just write it in.
Yakubu at Chase. Perfect.
Okay, great. So and then if there's anyone to add later, just let me know.
No problem. These are going to be the main, I guess, 5 to 7 people. I have 1, 2, Shadlin is 3, Angela's 4, Latasha's 5, Kima's 6, and I believe that's 6. I'm pretty sure there's one more, but I'll add it on after.
Okay, no problem. You just give it to me and we'll add them in.
And are we going to resume the same time for next Friday?
Yep, keep it the same. And then and again, everything's recorded. So we will be fine from there.
I don't know if you know, but Riverfest was canceled.
Oh, thank you for telling me that. That's good. Actually, I'm sorry it's canceled, but that may be good to know because then I don't have to give up that Saturday. So
exactly. If you could still ask, I forgot to mention it today, but I wanted to ask Lucrea if we could use one of the rooms for one of the Saturdays for the iBreast. And
Oh,
I have to-
yes. Oh, you know what? I meant to talk to her. Let me see if she's still here. I'll try to catch her now. If not, I will call her and get that answer. The answer is going to be yes. I know that. She's going to tell me to set up the details. So,
And we just need the best day for you. I think it'd be really great to host though for breast cancer
and you said
awareness.
in October, both of them?
Yeah, any Saturday. I think one of the first
Just
two
one
Saturdays
Saturday?
in October. If
One
we could
Saturday?
do two, great. If not, at least one. I would
Okay.
think first two Saturdays would be great because then the third Saturday we're gonna do that walk at